So Michael S. Piwowar was first appointed to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission by President Barack Obama and was sworn in on August 15, 2013. Dr. Piwowar was designated acting chairman of the commission by President Donald Trump from January 23, 2017 to May 4, 2017. Previously, Dr. Piwowar was the Republican chief economist for the U.S. Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs under Senators Mike Crapo and Richard Shelby. He was the lead Republican economist on the 4 SEC-related titles of Dodd-Frank, and the Jobs Act. Dr. Piwowar has worked on a number of important SEC-related oversight issues under the jurisdiction of the Banking Committee, such as securities, over-the-counter, investor protection, market structure, and capital formation. During the financial crisis and immediately thereafter, Dr. Piwowar served in a one-year fixed-term position at the White House as the senior economist at the President's Council of the Economic Advisors under both George W. Bush and the Barack Obama administration. While at the CEA, Dr. Piwowar also served as a staff economist for the Financial Regulatory Reform Working Group of the President's Economic Recovery Advisory Board. As a commissioner, Dr. Piwowar has been a strong supporter of technological modernization. He has supported rule change to transform the Commission's corporate disclosures and standardized searchable data. We are honored to have him join us in the inaugural RegTech Data Summit. As our keynote speaker, please join me in welcoming Commissioner Michael Piwowar to this podium.
Good morning. Thank you, Yolanda, for that very kind introduction. And special thanks to Hudson and John for your tireless efforts to transform government information into open data. I'm grateful for your invitation to address this conference today. I'm going to speak for maybe about 20 minutes, and I think for the rest of we'll have about 10 minutes for questions and answers that I'm happy to take in the remaining time during the session. Questions of FinTech and RegTech have been paramount in my mind, and I think it is safe to say the minds of my fellow commissioners in recent months. On the paneled walls in the rare books room of the Harvard Law School's library are painted the words, "Out of the old fields must spring and grow the new corn." A paraphrase from the lesser-known work of Chaucer, the line reminds us that even dusty old fields may yield new corn, or grain as we would say today. Chaucer expresses something very civilized here. Deprived of the nutrients drawn from the old field, new corn will wilt away. Without giving life to new corn, an old field remains a fallow patch of barren land. These are echoes of Chaucer. There are echoes of Chaucer in many areas of our life and history. Consider, for example, the Renaissance man's contemplation of the masterpieces of antiquity. For all their innovation, Michelangelo's greatest works owe a debt to the sculptors of Greece and Rome. Sir Isaac Newton famously expressed the humility of scientific progress when he remarked, "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulder of giants." Old fields and new corn are central to the debates of Edmund Burke and Thomas Paine, and the contemporary political, legal, and cultural struggles of progressives and conservatives. The interplay of old fields and new corn is perhaps nowhere more important than the development of the common law. Indeed, Harvard decorated its law library with this quotation from Chaucer because of its pedagogical value for lawyers in training. Dusty precedents have something important to teach us about new and evolving circumstances, even when such circumstances go far beyond the wildest dreams of our predecessors. A case in point arises in our field of securities law. The SEC's Division of Enforcement issued a report this past summer on the subject of the application of federal securities laws to decentralized autonomous organizations, commonly known as the DAO or DAO report. The DAO report described a virtual organization embodied entirely in computer code and whose transactions were executed on a distributed ledger or blockchain. The organization sold certain tokens to investors in exchange for hard assets which were intended to be used to fund certain joint projects. Token holders would share the anticipated earnings of these projects and would also have the ability to trade their tokens on a web-based secondary market platform. After the initial sale and distribution of the DAO tokens, however, approximately 1/3 were stolen by hackers, provoking the Commission's enforcement staff to take a closer look. Those of you reading this speech on the Commission's website will notice a number of words in the preceding paragraph that are surrounded with quotation marks. I'm sure those of you in the room could hear me sort of over-enunciate these recently introduced buzzwords: decentralized autonomous organizations, distributed ledgers, blockchains, tokens, web-based platforms. Several of these terms would have been indecipherable when I started my term as commissioner just 4 short years ago, let alone in 1934 when the SEC was established, the era of Joseph Kennedy and Ferdinand Pecora. What, if anything, can statutes, regulations, and precedents issued decades ago teach us about the new frontiers of FinTech and RegTech? Quite a lot, turns out. Undeterred by technological jargon, our enforcement division concluded, quite rightly in my judgment, that the fundamental principles of our federal securities laws apply equally to the new paradigm of virtual organizations or capital-raising entities that use distributed ledger or blockchain technology to facilitate capital raising and or investment and the related offer and sale of securities. In doing so, the Dow report relied heavily on the famous 1946 Supreme Court precedent of SEC v. W.J. Howey Company, which, believe it or not, dealt with the offer and sale to investors of units of a citrus grove development in Florida. Old fields, indeed. Why should this surprise us? After all, any first-year student of property law, or any economist who's worked with lawyers for an extended period of time, can trace the developments of the rule of capture from late 18th and 19th century fox hunters in Pearson v. Post to baseball fans catching a Barry Bonds homer in the 21st century. Why shouldn't we expect our own sturdy precedents of 85 years of federal securities laws to help us confront the new technologies? From Jeffrey Chaucer to our very own SEC chairman, Jay Clayton, who said recently, quote, "A change in the structure of a securities offering does not change the fundamental point that when a security is being offered, our securities laws must be followed." Said another way, replacing a traditional corporate interest recorded in a central ledger with an enterprise interest recorded through a blockchain entry on a distributed ledger may change the form of the transaction, but it does not change the subject. Chairman Clayton is correct. We must not elevate form over substance. As regulators, we should have confidence that our precedents provide an analytical framework within which to assess new technologies. To be sure, common law style reasoning is not a license to contort our precedents to cover any conceivable situation. In fact, on occasion, new regulatory action may be justified to address changes in our markets. But hastily promulgating new rules whenever we are confronted with new facts is the very definition of imprudence. Sometimes the collected wisdom of the past helps us to recognize that there is nothing new under the sun. To extend Chaucer's metaphor, sometimes old fields must be fertilized by regulators in order to maximize their fruitfulness. The term RegTech remains an ill-defined term. In fact, we just heard Hudson call it a buzzword, and we heard Craig say that it lacks context. In part, it covers the use of technology by regulators to fulfill our duties in a more thorough and efficient way, as is the case when our Market Abuse Unit Analysis and Detection Center deploys technological tools to deter insider trading and market manipulation. One such tool is our Advanced Relational Trading Enforcement Metric Investigation System, or ARTEMIS, which was designed by the Commission staff to combine historical trading and account holder data with other data sources to enable longitudinal, multi-user, and multi-trader analyses. In part, RegTech also refers to the use of technology by regulated entities to streamline their compliance efforts and reduce legal and regulatory costs. For instance, some have suggested that using blockchain technology and artificial intelligence tools would allow the easy and secure transferal of critical regulatory data to multiple federal agencies. Most importantly, in my mind, the term covers collaboration between private and public actors to take advantage of existing technologies and to make everyone's life easier. A case in point is the use of extensible business reporting language, or XBRL, data in regulatory filings. I know that XBRL reporting is near and dear to the hearts of many in attendance today, and we have the Data Coalition to thank for their many efforts in this regard. For those of you less familiar, in 2009, the Commission adopted requirements that certain financial statements and risk return summary information be submitted in this structured electronic format. Operating companies are required to submit financial statements in XBRL as exhibits and to post these exhibits on their website. Similarly, mutual funds are required to submit XBRL exhibits containing risk return summary information from registration statements and prospectuses to post these XBRL exhibits on their websites. The 2009 XBRL requirements were intended to prove the usefulness of financial statement and risk return summary information to investors, analysts, third-party information providers, filers, the Commission staff, and other data users. In general, information standards like XBRL allow machine reading of data to enhance the reliability, quality, and timeliness of information processing for producers and consumers of information, as well as regulators. The Commission makes a number of data sets extracted from XBRL filings available to the public on our website, updated on a quarterly basis. For example, detailed text and numeric information from all corporate financial reports filed with the Commission since the first quarter of 2009 are available for download. Detailed text and numerical information on the risk return summary of all mutual fund prospectuses since the fourth quarter of 2010 are also available for download. And since 2016, we've made crowdfunding offering data sets available, extracting information from XML-based filings such as offering statements, updates, annual reports, and terminations. When I served as acting chairman of the Commission in early 2017, I was very pleased to have the opportunity to vote with my fellow Commissioner, Kara Stein, to introduce proposed rules to require the use of inline XBRL for certain financial statement information and mutual fund risk return summary information. As I stated at that time, almost exactly 1 year ago today, structuring financial disclosures so that they are machine readable facilitates easier and faster analysis that can improve investor decision making. Structuring financial information can also assist in automating regulatory filings and business information processing. In particular, by tagging the numeric and narrative-based disclosure elements of financial statements and risk return summaries in XBRL, those disclosures are standardized and can be immediately processed by software for analysis. This standardization allows for aggregation, comparison, and large-scale statistical analysis that is less costly and more timely for data users than if the information were reported in an unstructured format. The direct benefit of XBRL to issuers, fund complexes, and regulators are clear. In addition, there are benefits to third parties, such as academics, who now regularly rely on the structured data format in preparing scholarly studies of our financial markets and disclosure regimes. In turn, these scholarly studies provide more information to help market participants, investors, and regulators make better decisions. The very same day that we voted on those rules, Commissioner Stein and I were also delighted to adopt new rules requiring registrants to include an HTML hyperlink to each exhibit listed in the exhibit index of certain filings. I realize that this change may seem minor, even trivial, but you'd be amazed how many people, political appointees, civil servants, securities lawyers, compliance professionals, investors, how many of these people approached me last year to extend their thanks for this simple rulemaking. As I noted at the time, for any person using the internet, it is nearly unthinkable for a web page to indicate that more information is available and not to include a hyperlink to such information. Yet, that was precisely how our critically important electronic data gathering, analysis, and retrieval, or EDGAR system, functioned as of 2017. I would encourage both my colleagues at the Commission and our friends in the private sector to think carefully about other changes that we might make in this vein. Surely there are other areas like HTML where we can enhance the effectiveness of our disclosure system at minimal or even reduced cost. Now, as we leave winter behind, it's time for us to consider what to sow in RegTech and what we hope to reap in due course. I'd like to survey a few of those items here today. One RegTech item that's been in the news in the past year is the Commission's very own EDGAR system that I just mentioned. I like to think of EDGAR as part of the Commission's hipster culture. Quaint, retro, and RegTech before it was cool. Those of you who are old enough to recall pre-EDGAR days may remember trips to the Commission's reading room to review paper filings, or, if you were lucky, to your local law library to review microfilm or microfiche images. By making filings truly accessible to the whole internet-wired world, EDGAR greatly enhanced and democratized the power of our disclosure-based regulatory system. The Commission is currently engaged in an EDGAR redesign program, a multi-year cross-commission initiative to develop and deliver a next-generation electronic disclosure system. Another area where the Commission has been at the forefront of RegTech is equity market structure. Specifically, in 2013, the Commission introduced the Market Information Data Analytics System, or MIDAS, to analyze big data generated by our equity markets. Every day, MIDAS collects and processes about 4 billion records from the proprietary fields of all the national equity exchanges and the consolidated tape. MIDAS timestamps every one of the messages it tracks within microsecond granularity. This system allows our Division of Trading and Markets to monitor market behavior, understand market events, and test hypotheses about the equity markets with a high level of precision. In addition to the Commission's internal use of MIDAS, we have made a number of data sets freely available to the public on an analytical platform that supports powerful research tools such as Python and Jupyter Notebook. Data scientists and economists can harvest MIDA data particular to their area of interest and conduct their own analyses. I hope that these empirical findings will be shared with the Commission, thereby increasing the bounty of insight we are able to reap about our equity markets. Of course, I cannot discuss data aggregation in the equity markets without mentioning the ongoing efforts related to the Consolidated Audit Trail, or CAT. When completed, the CAT will provide a comprehensive consolidated audit trail of all activity throughout U.S. markets in national market system securities, from order inception through routing, cancellation, modification, and execution. From a regulatory perspective, the CAT will represent a major advancement of the ability of the Commission and the national securities exchanges and FINRA to surveil the markets and protect investors. Not surprisingly, as a technological matter, the CAT is exceedingly complex. Despite the many years spent on this topic thus far, challenges remain across many areas, from the creation of the system itself to the protection of any personally identifiable information that will be contained within that system. Unfortunately, there are no easy answers for how to best address these challenges. I encourage the self-regulatory organizations working to develop the CAT to persevere in their efforts, and I appreciate the time, attention, and expertise that they have invested in the system thus far. One area of RegTech where we continue to sow and reap tangible rewards is in the technological capabilities of our Division of Enforcement. I previously mentioned the use of RegTech by our Division of Enforcement through the technologies such as Artemis. But that system is just one of many advanced technologies, both internally developed and in partnerships with the private sector, that we are deploying in our efforts to root out fraud in the securities markets and to protect investors. These investments in cutting-edge data analytics are allowing our enforcement staff to be more efficient and more effective in their investigations and more aggressive in uncovering fraud in hard-to-detect areas. The relatively short time between sowing and harvesting in the enforcement context should not prevent us, however, from investing time and effort in FinTech and RegTech that may take years to fully develop. Let us not forget that EDGAR, the centerpiece of the SEC's online presence today, was actually created before widespread adoption of the Internet. In a similar way, we might find that current efforts to understand and accommodate advancements in technology could pay untold dividends in the future. There are many exciting potential uses for distributed ledger and other technologies, from streamlined regulatory reporting to more efficient trading and lower cost capital formation. Each of these potential solutions will require an openness to change at the Commission, and a willingness to engage with market participants. I'm encouraged by the way the Commission staff in particular has shown an eagerness to meet these challenges head-on, and I hope that we will continue to foster innovation while at the same time ensuring compliance with our own rules and regulations. Although I'm excited about the potential for RegTech and FinTech, I cannot end this discussion without admitting that they give me a certain level of trepidation. With each technological advance that occurs, the Commission must confront a new opportunity for cyber threats to develop. These threats are just as pressing for the latest evolution as technology as they are for our legacy EDGAR system. As you may be aware, in August of 2017, the Commission learned for the first time that an incident that occurred in 2016 may have provided the basis for illicit gain through trading. The Commission staff took quick action to patch the security breach, and its investigation of the matter remains ongoing in coordination with the appropriate authorities. Now, because he is too modest to claim credit himself, allow me to boast a little bit about Chairman Jay Clayton's role in this area, as he has been the unsung hero on the Commission's cybersecurity front. Not only has Chairman Clayton's continuous and intense focus on cybersecurity since his first days in office contributed greatly to improving the risk management practices across our financial markets, he is also intent on improving the Commission's own risk management culture. I'm sure I speak for all of my fellow commissioners when I applaud him for his efforts in this regard. Thank you very much for your kind attention. It's been a pleasure addressing this inaugural RegTech Data Summit, which I hope grows into a new tradition. I also believe that this is the perfect time to be engaging in these discussions. Rapid advancements in technology are occurring at the same time that there is a renewed focus by this administration on capital formation and the competitiveness of our economy. Senior officials in the White House, Treasury, and all of the financial regulators, including the Commission, understand the potential for technological developments to improve our markets, grow our economy, and create jobs. Years from now, may we look back at this event as sowing the seeds in an old field of good soil and bearing much fruit. Thank you again, and in the time remaining, I'm happy to take questions from the audience. How do we want to do? Do you want to have people come, or is she gonna? You're gonna run this. Good. Good.
Do we have questions from the audience?
I answered them all.
So I will ask a question, and then people will follow.
Yeah, there we go.
Right, that's how it kicks off. So I thought a little bit about this last night in terms of kind of the SEC's role in having some of the most important commercially valuable data of any regulatory agency out. In terms of corporate disclosures, financial firm disclosures, mutual fund filings, and other data sets, of which tech companies create information and create products for investors. So talk to me a little bit about, in your view, what are the greatest challenges of the collection and dissemination process, and where is the most improvement needed from your perspective?
Great. No, those are excellent questions. So when I mentioned the cybersecurity breach that we had it was in the test system of the EDGAR system, and one of the things, if there's a silver lining to that, is that it caused a Chairman Clayton was already engaged in an evaluation of just those types of things. So the questions regarding what information are we collecting, what information has potential, material non-public information, what has potential personally identifiable information, and then just asking the simple question, do we need that data, right? And actually looking through and saying, first of all, do we need to be collecting all of the PII data that we have? And there's actually an effort that's going on at the Commission right now looking through that. If we don't need it, we shouldn't be collecting it because it's just in there for people to potentially go after, right? So that's the first part. Then the second one is, are we collecting the right data, right? And the data that we collect oftentimes are the result of rulemakings, and it's built into the rulemakings, and the reason why we collect this data is a way to evaluate in the future how well the rulemakings are working, right? And so how are we going to measure the success of a particular rulemaking or regulation? What data do we need to use to find the metrics that we need to do to evaluate those? And to the extent that we're collecting the right information, then we can make informed decisions about changing regulations going on in the future. And then the biggest challenge for disseminating that information is getting the appropriate balance for what information do investors need to make informed investment decisions, and how can we get that out to investors, but also balancing questions about proprietary trading strategies or other types of confidential information or proprietary information from the regulated entities, right? So as an example, collecting information on holdings of mutual funds, for example. We collect a more granular data set from that and then make available information that is not as granular, that won't allow certain investors to go out and reverse engineer trading strategies and that sort of stuff. So it's a balance between all those things, and obviously overlaying all of this is the cybersecurity and making sure that we protect the data that we have. In this ongoing multi-part review that the chairman has started, one of the things that he's come to, a couple key decision points that he's come to. One is that we need a chief risk officer at the commission, someone to oversee all of this, and we're having discussions right now with folks in the industry in terms of what types of qualities we would like to have in someone in that particular role. And the second one is we frankly just need more money. And so we've had flat budgets for a while. We get our appropriations level set from Congress, and the chairman has made very effective efforts speaking to folks on the appropriations committees and other folks that in order for us to protect this data that the public entrusts us with, we need more money to ramp up some cybersecurity efforts. So multi-part answer.
Do we have a mic over here?
Do we have a microphone?
John Nowlin, Commodity Futures Trading Commission. I only have one question in 14 parts.
I'll write them down.
First is, what is the SEC doing with communicating with other agencies about fintech? And then the second, actually there's only two, there's not 14. The second one is, what is the SEC's position on semantic technology and ontologies?
I don't even know what that last buzzword meant.
I just made it up.
Yeah, that's right. So we have no comment on it. The answer to your first question is, as you know, we work very closely with our financial regulators, particularly the CFTC in this space. We don't have the cool buzzwords yet, like Lab CFTC and some of the other things that you all have. But it's an issue that we work with, bilaterally with our fellow regulators, and also multilaterally. It's the issue of cryptocurrencies, for example, has attracted the attention of the Treasury Secretary, and a few weeks ago, in testimony with our chairman and your chairman, Giancarlo, mentioned that at the Financial Stability Oversight Council, at the FSOC meetings, that they've had discussions on cryptocurrencies in particular, but it's at the staff level has gone to broader questions about fintech and stuff. So it's an emerging area, and so it's obviously one that we're going to have to coordinate with fellow regulators, and that brings up a good point, right? That fintech and RegTech in general not only creates challenges for us in the commission, just across our divisions, whether it's in the corporate finance or in the asset management side and in investment management or in trading and markets, but also across all financial regulators, right? So, what is a crypto asset? Is it a commodity? Is it a security? What about an initial coin offering, right? Who has jurisdiction over that, right? You have marketplace lending issues that go across the banking regulators and consumer protection regulators, but then they securitize them, they become securities. And so that's very, very critical, is the coordination among the regulators. And I still don't know what those last two buzzwords that you made up were, so.
Mike Schlanger with Merrill Corporation. I have two questions. The first is maybe you could provide some insights into what Chaucer would think about tariffs.
I can't comment on that.
You mentioned pretty much a pretty strong endorsement of XBRL, and there's been a long-term, 10-year evolution of this,
right,
where I think the fruits are finally being harvested.
Yeah.
What's the commission doing about future requirements with other 34 Act filings?
Yeah.
There's been lots of discussion about proxy, MD&A. You mentioned inline XBRL. So any insights into that would be beneficial.
Yeah. No, it's an excellent question, right? So as I mentioned, Commissioner Stein who was with me. We were down to 2 commissioners during my acting chairman tenureship. And so for anything to go through, we'd have to get bipartisan, a 2-0 vote on anything, right? And out of the 6 rulemakings that we did, 2 of them involved, XBRL, inline XBRL, and then the hyperlinks, right? So you can see there's a commitment bipartisan on the commission, at least from us 2, and can't speak for the other commissioners, but that we've been pushing this. Anytime there's a rulemaking that we have going forward that enhances disclosures for investors, Commissioner Stein and I get together and say, look, is there an opportunity here to push forward on structured data, whether it's XBRL or XML or whatever it is. And so what you'll see is that in pretty much every one of our rule proposals that's out there, there are questions that we ask the public to say, look, what are there opportunities, very specific questions unique to those particular rulemakings for requiring structured data, recognizing there's a cost of providing that data from those who provide the data, my understanding is getting lower as technology advances in this space. But what we really need from folks in that public comment period is for you all to weigh in and say, look, these would be the benefits of doing it, because we need to justify it on a cost-benefit analysis, right? The Data Coalition has been tremendous in feeding that, but if you all individually as well too can come in and say, look, here's another potential benefit from this innovation, adding some sort of structured data to a particular rulemaking, that would be hugely helpful for us to be able to push forward with our rulemaking. Because if we don't get comment, or we only get comment on the other side, then we're subject, what's called the Administrative Procedure Act, where it's like, well, if nobody cares about this, then why are we moving? And we only get information on the cost side. So it's really critical, not only for us to tee up the issue, but to have folks from the outside explain to us why it's important to them. In some areas, it's more important than others, and so we need that as well too. Not just say everything is the most important thing in the world, but say, look, what would be the most important areas? And that one even coming in, and advocating through the Data Coalition and other folks and saying, look, here's 10 areas where you can add structured data, but here are the top 3 that we think are the most important. That would be helping us prioritize those would be very, very important as well too. So we out? Okay, thank you all very much.